And one day Damon and Jay-Z walked up in there while she was playing it.
I'm a man today, can't nobody. 'Cause every time I close my eyes, I think of you sitting here in this chair.
Got most of the experience when I was with Christión.
I got crazy after that single drop, yeah.
As I get higher and higher, dreams grow. Ever since you said goodbye, that's all I do. Oh, baby, you see things my way.
It wasn't the deal that went bad. It was all the stuff going down with Jay-Z and Dame. The split messed up everything.
'Cause I'm too cool, and what they say is true. Bring back your love, girl, that's all that I'm living for. Girl, I'm spending my time, wasting my time.
So we don't make the same mistakes I made with Roc-A-Fella.
Watching my life go down.
I got away from it. I walked away from the label. I asked him to let go, and he let me go. So I was lucky.
It's so beautiful and pure. Why must you be unkind?
Can sustain a living just selling records from the internet right now. It's a good thing, it's a bad thing.
I won't stop. I won't stop.
What if I told you the first ever R&B group signed to Roc-A-Fella Records was quietly erased by the very same label that promised them the world? Christión wasn't just some random duo. They had a hit song, a sound that matched the neo-soul movement, and the full cosign of both Dame Dash and Jay-Z. But despite all that, they vanished. No real promo, no push, not a feature from labelmate Jay-Z, not even a cameo in a music video. Just poof, gone. So what really happened behind the scenes? Was it bad timing, poor marketing, or did Roc-A-Fella never really want them to win in the first place? Because when you look closer, Christión's story isn't just about music. It's about loyalty, betrayal, label politics, and how being the first to do something at a label like Roc-A-Fella might also make you the first to get burned. Let's talk about how an R&B dream turned into an industry ghost story. Most people assume Christión just didn't pop off, that their debut album flopped, and they quietly faded away. Simple, right? But that's the lazy version of the story. The truth? Way messier, way more frustrating, and way more revealing about how the music industry, especially Roc-A-Fella at the time, really treated artists who didn't fit their image. Let's start here. Christión should have been a win. They weren't some no-name hopefuls off the street. Kenny Ski and Alan Anthony were already bubbling in California. Their demo was doing the rounds. And then, out of nowhere, Dame Dash, Roc-A-Fella's wildcard co-founder, hears a track called Full of Smoke. Instantly hooked. He doesn't wait. He doesn't deliberate. He moves. Within 5 days, the duo is in New York, shaking hands with Jay-Z and kicking it with The Rock. You'd think that meant a star-making rollout was coming, right? Wrong. See, Roc-A-Fella was a hip-hop machine. They knew how to launch rappers, build street buzz, drop mixtapes, flood the block. But when it came to R&B, they were clueless. They tried to launch Christión the same way they launched Memphis Bleak. BT was slow to bite. MTV didn't care. Radio didn't know how to spin them. The fans were confused. The industry was unprepared. And the label? They just kept shrugging. Now here's the kicker. Full of Smoke wasn't some mid-tier ballad. It charted. Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 53. It was lush, jazzy, emotional. Perfect for that late 90s neo-soul wave. But while Maxwell, Erykah Badu, and D'Angelo were making waves, Christión had a hit, and no machine to push it. Why? Because Roc-A-Fella didn't understand what they had. They saw a vibe, not a vision. And the more they treated Christión like just another rap crew, the quicker that early momentum fizzled out. That's where the misconception started. People thought the group flopped, that the music wasn't strong enough. But the truth is, the label fumbled them from the jump, and it only got worse from there. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. Roc-A-Fella had no plan for Christión. Zero. Zip. Nada. They signed them because Full of Smoke sounded dope, not because they had a blueprint for how to break an R&B act. And that distinction, it matters, because when you don't have a strategy, even the best artists get lost in the shuffle. See, Dame Dash heard one great song and assumed that was enough. The thinking was, they're talented, they're soulful, we'll slap the rock logo on it and boom, platinum. But the music industry doesn't work like that, especially not for R&B. Hip-hop promotion is all about buzz, street teams, freestyles, club spins. But R&B is different. It's slow burn. It's radio play, music video rotations, female fan engagement, late-night talk show spots. It needs nurturing. And Roc-A-Fella, they treated Christión like the stepchild of the label. They were booked for the wrong venues, handed off to rap-focused promoters, and largely ignored by the industry gatekeepers who actually move R&B records. Kenny Ski even said it himself. They couldn't get on BET. There was no MTV push. It was like releasing a soulful jazz-funk album into a rap battlefield, with no armor. Meanwhile, their debut album, Ghetto Cyrano, was a gem. A moody, lush, deeply textured body of work that had soul, blues, and hip-hop blended into one. But when it dropped, crickets. Not because it was bad, but because nobody knew it was out. That's the most frustrating part. These guys had a whole album full of bangers. Bring Back Your Love, I Want to Get Next to You, and of course, Full of Smoke. Songs that could have charted, should have charted, but they got buried. Why? Because Roc-A-Fella was trying to play Diddy's game without Diddy's playbook. They wanted to be Bad Boy Records so bad, but forgot one key thing. Puffy knew how to market R&B. Dame and Jay? Not so much. They were winging it, and Christión paid the price. The hot take is simple. Christión didn't flop. The label did. They were in over their heads, and instead of admitting that, they just let the group quietly fade away. But trust, Christión saw the writing on the wall, and resentment started bubbling fast. And this is where things get icy, literally, because while Christión was dressing head to toe in Roc-A wear, shouting out the label, riding hard for the team, Jay-Z barely acknowledged them. No features, no hooks, no cameos, nothing. They weren't just left out of Jay's albums, they weren't even in his videos. Imagine being the only R&B act on one of the hottest rising labels in hip-hop, and you can't even get a, yo, go check out Christión in a radio interview. It was radio silence. Kenny and Alan were confused, hurt, frustrated, and let's be real, rightfully so, because from their perspective they were loyal soldiers. Wherever they went they wore the rock, spoke like family, promoted the brand like it was gospel. But the love, unreturned. In Kenny's own words, we were pumping the rock, but the block wasn't pumping us. And let's pause there. Because that one line, that says it all. These weren't just artists signed to a label. They felt like they were part of a movement until the movement moved right past them. At the time, Jay-Z was blowing up, dropping videos, singles, and albums back to back. And with all that momentum, you'd think he'd throw a bone to the only R&B act on the team. A quick feature, a bridge on a track, maybe a cameo in a flashy video. Something to say, hey, this is our crew, we rise together. But Jay? Nah, that's not how he played. He didn't put them on. And honestly, it exposed a pattern. Jay-Z's not the guy to help you build from scratch. That's never been his style. He's more, if you're hot, I'll co-sign, then let me help you get hot. It's tough love at the Roc, but sometimes it just looked like indifference. Now Dame Dash tried to defend this in later interviews. He said Jay didn't jump on anyone's first single, that he didn't believe in handouts, that it was all about self-made success. But if that's the case, why sign Christión at all? Because let's be honest, if you bring someone into the family, then sit back while they starve, that's not tough love. That's neglect. And as the silence from Jay-Z grew louder, Christión's loyalty turned to resentment. The R&B dream was crumbling. Fast. Let's just say it, Jay-Z ain't no Lil Wayne, and he damn sure ain't Eminem. Because while Jay was focused on building himself into a mogul, Wayne and M were out here building empires by lifting their crews with them. Let's break it down. When Eminem found 50 Cent, he didn't wait. He didn't say, let's see how you do on your own first. Nah, he gave him patiently waiting, shouted him out constantly, had him in every video, every tour. Eminem bet the house on his artists. Same with Lil Wayne. Wayne put Nicki Minaj and Drake on everything. He dragged them into the spotlight, gave them verses, platforms, energy. He invested in their rise. And it worked. Those cosigns were lifelines. But Jay was like, good luck, kid. No features, no real promotion, no strategic rollouts, just a label deal and a pat on the back. Figure it out yourself. Christión got caught in that cold machine. They weren't hot yet, and Jay wasn't about to help them heat up. It was every man for himself, and Christión just didn't have the resources to fight through. And what makes it worse? They had already proven themselves. Full of Smoke was buzzing. The streets were feeling them. They had a unique look, a unique sound, and were ahead of the curve with that soulful, moody R&B lane. The timing should have been perfect, but Roc-A-Fella dropped the ball, and Jay never even picked it up. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just a Christión problem. Cameron said the same thing when he got to Roc-A-Fella. He came in with heat, tracks, ideas, and Jay-Z wasn't interested, didn't want to hop on songs, didn't want to collaborate. It was like a pattern. If you weren't already blowing up, you weren't getting a Jay-Z verse, period. And when you're the only R&B act on a rap-dominated label with no roadmap, no marketing plan, and no A-list feature to push you through, what are you really supposed to do? Christión stayed loyal, but loyalty doesn't pay the bills, and it definitely doesn't get you spins on BET. They needed a little help from the top. And Jay-Z? He just watched from the penthouse. This wasn't just a case of bad timing. It was bad leadership. And for Christión, that leadership vacuum would soon lead to the split that ended it all. At some point, even loyalty taps out. After being iced out, overlooked, and flat out underpromoted, Christión started to crack. The tension between the label and the group turned into quiet distance, then into silence, then into a split. Kenny Ski was the first to walk, and who could blame him? He saw the writing on the wall. Roc-A-Fella wasn't going to back them. Jay-Z wasn't calling. The buzz around Full of Smoke had cooled off. They were stuck in limbo, and Kenny didn't want to die waiting. Meanwhile, Alan Anthony stuck around, thinking maybe a solo project could reignite things. And for a minute, it looked like something was happening. He started working on a debut album called Oakland International. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 full versions of the album. And guess how many got released? 0. Dame Dash kept rejecting the projects, saying they didn't sound like Christión, which is wild because Alan wrote and produced 90% of their first album. How does the sound suddenly not fit when he is the sound? This is where it gets tragic. Roc-A-Fella had already broken up. The label was splitting down the middle. Jay on one side, Dame on the other. It was chaos. Artists were caught in the crossfire. And Alan, he got left behind. Again. And while all this was happening, Christión's name was fading fast. By the time 2005 rolled around, Kenny tried to revive the brand on his own. He released Project Plato under the Christión name, but let's be real, it wasn't the same. Alan wasn't even on it. His replacement? A former backup singer named T. Ross. No shade, but the chemistry wasn't there. Christión without Alan was like mint tea with no mint. You could sip it, but it wasn't hitting like it used to. And Alan? After being shelved 3 times and ghosted by a crumbling label, he completely pivoted. He went from soul singer to heavy metal frontman, forming a rock band called Pain with his cousin Sean Bivens. Yeah, a metal band. They released an album called Broken Dreams in 2006 and even landed a track on the Sawtooth soundtrack. Respect. But let's be honest, it was a wild left turn, and it never gained real traction. Meanwhile, the legacy of Christión was shrinking, quietly being erased from the Roc-A-Fella history books. They were never part of the Roc-A-Fella documentaries. They weren't on the reunion merch. No tribute. No, we were the first. Nothing. It was as if the label wanted to forget them just as fast as it discovered them. And when you look back at how the industry failed them and how the label fumbled their shot, it's not just disappointing, it's disrespectful. Here's the part that really stings. Christión should have been leading the neo-soul wave. Like, they had the look, the sound, the vibe. They weren't chasing trends. They were the trend. Full of Smoke came out right as neo-soul was catching fire. Think about it. Maxwell was soaring. Erykah Badu was changing the game. D'Angelo was redefining masculinity in R&B. It was a golden window, and Christión fit right in. But instead of riding that wave, they got drowned out by label confusion and rap tunnel vision. Roc-A-Fella had one job, nurture the talent, but they were too busy trying to recreate Bad Boy's formula. And let's be real, Bad Boy had R&B figured out. Puffy was putting Mary J. Blige in mink coats and glass stages, remixing Faith Evans into hip-hop royalty, and making R&B acts feel just as important as their rappers. Meanwhile, Roc-A-Fella was still trying to figure out how to spell promo. Christión needed photo shoots, radio tours, candlelit acoustic sets. They got freestyle DVDs, rap release parties, and Jay-Z telling them, good luck. Even when Christión managed to get on the streets as watching soundtrack with tracks like Pimp This Love and Your Love, it still wasn't enough. They were always the "and" on every rollout. Never the headline they didn't get to tell their story. They were just used to fill the R&B slot so Roc-A-Fella could say they had one. And the saddest part? They blended in with the neo-soul elite without ever being officially welcomed into the circle. While Anthony Hamilton was building a legacy, and Maxwell was earning multi-platinum plaques, Christión was releasing underground projects on life support. By the time Kenny dropped Project Play-Doh, the industry had already moved on. And Alan? He was singing about hellfire and metal guitars in California bars, while Spotify was introducing a new generation to artists like Musique Soulchild and Jill Scott. That should have been Christión's lane, that should have been their playlist. But when the machine lets you slip through the cracks, the algorithm doesn't remember you, and neither does the mainstream. So while neo-soul lived on, evolved, flourished, Christión's sound disappeared into the shadows, not because it wasn't good enough, but because the people backing them never cared enough to push it. So what's the legacy of Christión? Well, it's complicated. They're remembered for one song, Full of Smoke, a smoky, soul-drenched anthem that still makes people pause and say, yo, who was that again? It was moody. It was hypnotic. It should have been the launchpad to stardom. Instead, it became a haunting reminder of what happens when the music is ready, but the machine isn't. Today, Christión pulls about 35,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Not bad considering they haven't had a major release since the 90s, but let's be honest, it's a nostalgic echo, not a comeback. Alan Anthony tried to go solo. He dropped projects like Urban Pop and Popstar, but they never caught fire. His Spotify numbers hover around 1,000 monthly listeners, a far cry from where he should be. And Kenny Ski? He's kept busy with collaborations, small releases, and his Groove Divinities project with Jimmy Sloan. But again, no breakout. The group never reunited in a big way. No Verzoos, no Roc-A-Fella throwback tour, no Where Are They Now special. Just silence. It's like they were airbrushed out of Roc-A-Fella history. No one talks about how they paved the way for future R&B signings, how they took the risk of being the first, how they stayed loyal, even when it didn't pay off. Because here's the thing, Christión didn't fail. The system failed them. They were a test case in a label that didn't know what to do with them, backed by artists who didn't step up, and thrown into an industry that chews up R&B acts when there's no plan. So what are they remembered for? A single that still slaps, a vibe that was ahead of its time, and a cautionary tale that still echoes today. Don't sign the deal if the label doesn't understand your lane. And where are they now? Still grinding, still creating, still existing in the shadows of a genre they helped shape but were never allowed to lead. Christión may not have topped charts, but they left behind a blueprint of how talent without strategy becomes potential without legacy. And that is the real smoke no one talks about.